Welcome, my name's Dr. Jason W. Morrison and I'm a theologist from New South Wales, Australia. Psychologists help people with themselves and other people, and theologists help people with themselves and God.
Well, the bushfires are back. The smoke's back. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist, New South Wales, Australia. And I want to continue to talk about theological abuse and the forms in which it can work and the ways in which it disguises itself. A little bit uncoordinated today. It's very, very smooth. In fact, I've never seen it this smooth. It's like glass out here. There's the rescue over there. What are they doing? I'm sure that's marine rescue. Anyway, we'll continue on. Very, very smooth. Awesome view this morning. Look at this. We've got the haze of the smoke. If I do start to cough, it's because of that. Just let me remind you, this is shark infested water. You can't swim in it here at Gosford on the Central Coast. You can swim in it, but it'll be at your own risk. If you get attacked, it's your fault. Incredible amount of smoke here today. Incredible, absolutely incredible. The fires are thick, and I would believe this would be very, very bad for people with respiratory problems and eye problems as well. So the doctors in the hospitals will be getting a lot of people coming in with respiratory and eye problems, I'd imagine. Let me go back to when I first started my Christian journey. Quite an interesting story, possibly for some of you. But what happened was, it's a very complicated story, but I will start. I met a girl who I started to date, and there was a lot of stuff going on in her family which I wasn't aware of. The father had been having affairs with her friends. He'd also had an affair with the mother's sister. Let me just say, he liked his women. Whether or not that was in its right order or not's another story. Here comes the marine rescue to my left. I hope they're not going to chip me. They might. I'm pretty sure the best I got on is legit. As we cut through the chop. So there was all sorts of things. The mother had moved out into a little unit to try and get some order. Obviously very hurt and broken. And these things aren't uncommon. It wasn't like it was an exception. These things happen to people. But I'd come into the middle of this. I'd been a bricklayer, a mad surfer of a morning, and a Harley Davidson rider of a night. And so, just curious, these guys are really moving. But I'd come into this situation where there was a lot of sadness, and the girl, when I met her, she liked to drink. I told her, if you want to hang out with me, that's got to go. I didn't like the drink. I'd seen the damage that it had done. We're going to have some waves coming up behind us. From the rescue guys just waved, so they're not upset with me. They would have been if I hadn't worn my life-saving vest, impact vest. So that's good, one less concern. So I'd come into a very dysfunctional family. Now, looking back at my side of things, it's alright to look at somebody else's side, but you've got to look at your own side as well. I'd grown up in a very dysfunctional family, very loving, as were the people that I'd run into. Very loving, but very dysfunctional. You can be loving and dysfunctional, okay? Now here comes the waves behind us. This is going to be interesting. We might be catching a few waves here, viewers. Let's see what happens. I'd say we're going to be catching a few waves, so let's give it a go. My family background was, my father was a jockey, so he was in amongst the women anyway. He had no chance really. My mother was a hairdresser, just a normal Aussie girl. They both smoked. I guess that's worth mentioning because of the damage that comes with that. And unfortunately, my father was a womanizer. Now, I'm not saying that to belittle the man or anything like that. It's just how it was. And the pain and the suffering that come with that, I wouldn't wish on anyone. We moved from racetrack to racetrack along the eastern seaboard of Australia to cater for where the work was relative to my father on the race tracks. So we moved around quite a bit, and as we come into the shallows over near the train line, and of course temptation gets the better of these jockeys. Not all of them, but in a lot of cases, I suppose. In some cases, I think they've fixed a lot of it now because they're subject to so many women. And I guess the adrenaline that comes with all that, as those waves come crashing into the shore now, the wake off the boat, so I remember once we lived on a racetrack, but we didn't have proper accommodation. I was only a little boy. I was only a young fella. But I do remember we lived on the dirt. I think it was in a stable. And it was completely out of order. It wasn't fair at all, you know. And Mum was trying to manage as best as she could. She was very sick. She became very sick due to stress and not being treated right. Probably some personal things that were there to start with that were aggravated by the bad marriage. And I can remember we lived in a racetrack on a dirt floor, and Mum decided that it was time to leave. I think she'd gotten ill. She caught a sexual disease off the father, and she decided that it was time to go. Enough was enough. I remember we got on a Greyhound bus. I think it was from a place called Southport, here up near the border of Queensland and New South Wales, bound for Sydney, Berala, where Mum would reunite with her parents and try and get some stability back in her life. Consequently, when we got back, apparently I do vaguely remember on the bus trip back from Southport, Mum gave us some baked beans, a tin of baked beans, and I remember throwing the baked beans at everyone on the bus. I got in terrible trouble, and I think that was just an emotional reaction to the trauma that we were experiencing and sensing as children. And I'm sure many of you can relate to this, the way trauma manifests when you're not sure about things and you've got things happening to you, to your parents, that you just have no clue about. There's no answers. You're too young to understand, and all you can do is react. Some kids hide under beds. Some kids lock themselves in cupboards. Some kids won't let go of their mother. There's all different ways in which this trauma, this unsurety of the wrongs going on between parents, in which it manifests. That was one of the ways in which it manifested in me. Where's that train going, viewers? To Sydney. That's right, to Sydney. 1 hour and 20 minutes to 1.5 hours south. We're actually heading in the north direction. So I can also tell you that children that go through incredible trauma through the breakdown of their parents getting along together and stuff, this can cause incredible dysfunction emotionally in young children, like perversion, illegitimate jealousies and destructivenesses, just things like that can be birthed in the heart of a child and connect to the emotions of a child that's been exposed to dysfunction between adults, particularly their parents. Now, when parents split, one of the first and most primary things that a child will lose is their identity, is who they are. And with this comes things like an inability to learn, an inability to sit still in the classroom, which aggravates teachers and causes them to get in trouble. Next thing, you have this pattern of getting in trouble and, you know, being a naughty child. But it's deeper than that. It's not just that you're trying to be a naughty child, it's that you've got stuff going on that you don't understand or know how to deal with. That's what it is. And it's coming from home. Too often we fail to realise this as adults, and we get the wrong perception. See, trying to work things out all the time as an adult on what's going on in children is very hard, because there's so many dynamics associated with that. There's all sorts of dynamics as we go under the train bridge. So for me, it was a loss of identity. It was to try and find things that I could do that made me feel, as it were, like I was alive. I was very fast on my feet, but very dysfunctional. I remember at early years of school, even at the age of 5, this bizarre attraction towards my teacher. Now, I was only 5 years old. Where did that come from? Where did that come from? Why did I have an attraction at the age of 5 towards my teacher, my kindergarten teacher? I believe it come out of the dysfunction of the home, of what was going on at home. Some seabirds this morning. We're really shallow here. That's okay. We're going in the opposite direction this morning. I'll just get across to the channel. There they go. Something happens deep inside when things go wrong with parents. Because everything we have and everything we are is built on our relationship with them, on how we see them and on how we perceive them. Now, that train could be going down to South Australia. That's a freight train. Now, we have a bird there, just there. He's a little grey bird. I don't know if you can see him on the... There he goes. They get frightened easy, particularly with the noise of trains and all that stuff. Beautiful day. Pelicans up there. So our identity and the way that we're shaped emotionally and our responses to those emotions are critical to the health of our mother and father and their relationship. Isn't it funny how relationship is intrinsic to the formation of a child? Well, one of the responses of this was the need to be near girls for me. Now, I'm being very open and personal. At a young age, I had a need to be in the company of girls that I liked. And I wasn't the only one, but again, how much of the constructive side of my formation as a child growing up was distracted as a result of this, which was a cause of my parents separating and the trouble and the divorce and the illness and the fighting and the unforgiveness and the shunning and everything that comes with that. How much impact did that have on my formation? I don't think anybody was aware of it. I didn't know what was going on. It was just a horrible part of what happens when you have parents that divorce. A horrible part. I'm just trying to be transparent. I'm trying to relate to somebody out there that may have experienced the same things. When you think and you look back on the life of Ted Bundy, as it were, he always claimed that he had a normal upbringing, but he didn't. His father was out of the Navy, and I think he abandoned the mother. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just going, but I know something happened between the father and the mother, and then She met another man, and all this stuff went on. They were involved in religion, and there was all sorts of stuff going on that I believed contributed to his formation into a serial killer, a diabolical and clever serial killer. I believe it was the formation that went on during his childhood that contributed to him having these emotional needs to be near women, but only to bring them to their demise. What actually went on between him and his mother, I am not fully aware of. I just don't know. But what I do know is it would have had a major contribution in him forming into a serial killer. Some people are born killers, okay? But some people are formed into killers emotionally, not because they mean to, but because it's the only way they can feel a solution to their needs inside. For some people it might be riding motorbikes. There's constructive ways of meeting those needs, but there's destructive ways as well of meeting those needs. Now I'm just going to bend down. So I think you can get the gist of what I'm saying. Our formation during our early childhood years are critical to how we're going to end up as adults. It's not just some minor little detail of what is, or you know, it's the way a children's going to turn out is automatic. That's not right, no. I know for a fact that I had a motorcycle addiction. Yes, a motorcycle addiction. Because when we were little, one of my friends had a brother, a bigger brother, who, when he'd come down the street on his motorbike, he had a 1959 Matchless 650, an English motorbike. He'd come round that corner, man, and we thought he was so cool. Now, seeing him as being so cool was more important than obeying the stepfather. Does that make sense? Seeing him as being, you know, and wanting to be like him. He became somebody that we wanted to be like and tried to be like, and it led us into trouble because that wasn't how we were supposed to be. That wasn't what we were meant to be. He got in trouble too. He ended up in prison for drugs and things like that. Lost his family, lost his wife. Terrible. I remember there was 4 of us young blokes that used to hang out together in the street. And I remember one day there was one of us, he was a really good guy, he had a great family, relatively successful. His dad had been in the Navy. Really good people. But they were onto this guy with the motorbike. They didn't like him because they knew that he was going to be trouble. We couldn't listen to that, could we? We had to have our way. Stupid young kids. I remember this guy who never had a problem with his parents falling out with his parents, and the conscience that gave me. I knew it just wasn't right. It just wasn't the way it was supposed to be. But the influence that this man had on us, and he didn't intend it to be that way, was one that gave us an identity. Now, the thing I don't understand is why my friend, he's dead now, why he rebelled against his parents, because he come from a good family. I couldn't see any dysfunction there at all. And so there's many different ways in which we get formed from our childhood into becoming adults. There's many different ways and many different reasons. I remember I had one friend that fell in love with his auntie. He just fell in love with his auntie. And they had to sort all that out and clean all that up. And you come up in these families where they teach you that affection and sexual, kissing and all this sort of thing is wrong. Well, where does a person go then? What do they do? What do they turn to meet those needs? Because they're natural needs. They're not illegitimate needs, they just need to be met the right way, which God's plan was through marriage. And then you got marriage doesn't suit everybody, does it? Just doesn't, unfortunately. It's just the way it is. It just doesn't suit everybody. So therefore not everybody wants to do it. So how does a church manage relationships where people don't want to get married because they know they've been through too much trauma watching their parents and their marriage? They'd sooner have the safety of being able to flee should something go wrong in their relationship. It's not so easy when you're married, although it seems to be becoming easier these days. Oh, there's some rocks, hang on. No, we got through. So there's many different dynamics that form children into the parents that they become. Now we've got a pelican coming straight for us. I'm not sure he knows what to do, but he just caught himself a fish. There he is, viewers. Beautiful Australian pelican. He's going to get out of our way. Just a bit of scenery for you while you're listening to this talk. I'm sure some of the listeners right now can relate to what I'm saying. Then you get into the realm of, there he is, a really good view of our pelican friend there. The realm of abuses within families, and I can remember in our street, I can't say names, but one of the families was very big, and you would hear the mother and the father screaming, and you would hear when we'd play cricket in the street, they'd come out and they'd scream at the children to come home. Everything was highly charged. Wonderful people. But it turned out the mother was having an affair. And the damage that come out of that, in fact, as a matter of fact, just about a month or two, maybe a little bit more than that ago, I saw one of the boys out here in his kayak. He was paddling around fishing in his kayak, and he seemed to turn out okay. But that family disintegrated, and so to a certain extent did the identity of those boys. Being a parent's massive, isn't it? It comes with a massive responsibility, and as such, massive. Very low tide today. There was another case where you get children that don't get along with their step parents. It's all too much. They have to find another way. They move, they leave, they abandon their roots. And what happens? They lose their identity, don't they? It just goes, it just gets stolen from them. It's like a stolen, you had your person stolen from you. You didn't get the right to enjoy your mother and your father. You had to find some other way, some other unnatural way.
Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like, maybe even comment. If you watched it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.